Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of SaaS District. I'm your host Akil Jabbar, and today I have a special guest with me, Dan Sallis, to chat about finding disruptive ideas in today's startup and markets for your next startup. We're trying something a little bit different today. We're going to do something live. We're actually in person in Dan's office. I met Dan just a couple of weeks ago, who's here in Guadalajara actually building out his team. And I know he's kind of going back and forth between here and Denver, so I thought let me try to get a hold of him and book this in before he goes back. I've been here since January, and I probably found a handful of SaaS owners. So I thought let's take this opportunity while we can, and have an in-person session. So thank you for joining us.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Akil. This is really great. It's I'm glad to see that you're down here, and the environment here in Guadalajara is just really mind blowing. I'd heard about it, and I came down in January as well, and I heard of this organization called Startup GDL, and I thought I'd go over and knock on the door and find a couple of people with some laptops kind of trying to put something together. And I walk into this huge organization here where everybody has 2 or 3 screens that they're working on, and there's all these software engineers. So I said, well, where do I sign up? let's start building a team down here. So it's really interesting. I had come to Guadalajara many years ago, and it's really good to be back and to be a part of this vibrant tech scene that's going on down here, right?
Yeah, I love it here so far, and don't plan to leave. So we're enjoying it while we can.
Sure.
So for our audience who don't know you, could you share a little bit about a background about yourself, how you became an entrepreneur, and how you started and founded Cynch as CEO today?
Sure. So I had always been a serial entrepreneur and been running my own gig kind of my entire life, and then I'd always relied on technology to support my businesses. So getting back to Guadalajara, for example, a couple of decades ago, I actually brought meat from Montford and IBP in the United States, and then would bring it down here and sell it into Guadalajara, Mexico City, Aguascalientes, and Los Altos around in this area. And back then, that was in the kind of the mid 90s, I was using the bulletin boards, and I think it was DBase 2 or DBase 3 or something to manage my inventory and my profit and loss and that sort of thing. So, and then fast forward to the later in the 2000s. Of course, I've always been a geek, and I just hung a server on the internet, I think in 1995, and I've had a server and have been managing servers on the internet ever since then. And so in the 2000s, I'm providing consulting services to other companies and begin building a platform. Kind of a similar situation to what they were doing over at NetSuite. They started with financials. We started with online commerce and that sort of thing. So we have been building a platform really since the kind of the mid 2000s is when we launched our first e-commerce platform, and then have been building kind of this the dream has been to build a platform that anybody could manage their entire business on, right? So you could sell online, you can manage your inventory, you can run a point of sale, you can run repair operations and that sort of thing, and really something that's accessible to not only larger companies and mid-sized companies, but to small micro companies as well. And so that's what really gets me excited, and that's what we've been working on for quite a long time now.
Cool. So I know that when people think of the word disruptive, that's kind of what we're trying to talk about in this episode. They think of words like AI, blockchain, flying to Mars. This morning I heard Elon Musk's new podcast on Joe Rogan. He was talking about Neuralink. So these are things that people, young people maybe think about. In comparison, you maybe picked what many may consider like a boring industry because It's ERP, yet it still actually is ripe for disruptions. How did you decide or come up with, uncovering that this is a problem that we need to tackle and there is opportunity to still disrupt it?
Well, sure. Well, I think that there's a couple of things going on there. First of all, AI is interesting, and I think augmented reality and virtual reality is very, very interesting. But it still has a long way to run. Just the augmented reality of just the audio that we have, to where now we can have something in our ear and the computer's kind of talking to us daily, is something that's very interesting. But I think we have another couple of decades to run before we really have, kind of full virtual reality and more augmented reality. And then when it comes to artificial intelligence and machine learning, I think that I kind of agree with Andrew Yang's analogy that before we have to worry about the machines taking over the world, I'm more concerned about the overpopulation on Alpha Centauri than I think we have a long way to run. I think that we're a good 50 to 100 years out from having really good solid AI. The other issue with AI is that how do you apply artificial intelligence or machine learning to processes that are still on paper, for example, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so we, a good number of our customers are Ace Hardware stores, for example, where they still manage many of their processes on paper and make good old-fashioned phone calls to their customers to update them on repair orders, for example. And so until they're able to digitize that and get that into ones and zeros, then there's really not a whole lot of AI that can be applied to that. Mm-hmm. So and then kind of the driving factor has been that the customers keep coming and asking us. They can't, these smaller companies can't seem to find good solutions out there, right? So, and I think we're kind of in a transition period from maybe web, the 2.0, the 2.0 version of the web, where now we have Facebook, we have really good access to electronic communications, we have text messaging and WhatsApp, and we have good email. We can get email for free from Gmail. We can create documents and share documents and store documents, that sort of thing. And connect on Facebook and other social platforms, but I'd say that that's kind of the easy part.
Sure.
That now you've just you've done the easy part, and then there's point solutions. So as a part of that 2.0, is that companies were looking for email marketing, for example, to say, well, I need a way to manage my email communications with my customers. So constant contact as a point solution worked really well, but I didn't really care if it connected with my e-commerce platform, right? I didn't care, but I think that's changing. Mm-hmm. What we're hearing now is customers, and I think even enterprise customers are turning around and saying, look, it's really important that I have everything on one platform, so I'll give up a little bit of functionality, for my email marketing, for example, as long as it is now integrated with my e-commerce platform, right? Mm. That's becoming more important, and I think that's really becoming the really difficult problem to solve. So, just as an example here, recently, I'm still getting email from airlines asking me how my flight was, and to take a survey to let them know how my flight was when the flight was actually canceled. So obviously their systems, even those large airlines, their systems aren't talking with each other because they're using disparate systems, and that integration is something that hasn't been done very well yet. So I think that we're in at a stage where that we're finding out that the interoperability between systems just isn't working all that well, mm-hmm. and probably will not work all that well into the future. And so as an analogy, let's take a kind of a simple problem to look at that with. So let's think of a product. So you have a product that you're selling either online or in your store, and then you have some pricing associated with it. So let's say that you're selling coffee cups, and then you say that, well, I'm going to have on my e-commerce platform, I'm using a point solution, and it has, for simplicity reasons, let's say it has a dealer price, a retail price, mm-hmm. and a cost associated with it, right? Sure. And then I'm going to sell those in my store as well as in my point of sale. So let's say my point of sale has maybe those same costs, but now it has some promotions engine that runs that says that, well, if a customer comes in and they're a loyalty customer, then I'm going to give them a certain discount and a different price. And then let's turn around and say, now I've got an inventory system and I have a couple of more, some different fields over here that I need to map, right? Just trying to get the some software engineers in a room to talk about, to decide which fields should be mapped and how they should be mapped is already very complex, just with the small number, with 3 systems you're trying to integrate, right? And with just a small number of fields. And then when you add to that, now you have to communicate that to your customer. So you have to, so let's say your customer is a hardware store, for example, and now you have to tell your customer that, well, the field that you're using over in e-commerce is mapped to this field over in the POS, and this is why. And if you change the field in your POS, it's not going to change on your e-commerce. And just trying to explain to them so that they can understand what they, how that works becomes very complex. And then when you add it, when you drop that same problem into the real world, to where you actually have dozens of pricing fields for a product, right? Then you increase the magnitudes, you increase the complexity by magnitudes, right? And then when you add all the other fields that you have for products, for example, so in our platform, for example, we have over 70 tables that manage product properties, everything from customer pricing to different products, different properties of products, to faceted searches, for example. So even as something like a faceted search, trying to integrate that with other systems becomes almost impossible. And what I see is that the large software companies out there, what they're saying is, well, let's throw a bunch of engineers at it. Let's just keep throwing software engineers at it. So one of the largest companies in the world has somewhere in the order of 3,000 software engineers working on porting their software over from a very old system into a newer system. I won't go into names here, but I think that all the vendors have the same problems, and they're failing. They're failing to deliver. The customers are not happy with the product that they're delivering. They're pushing out their sunsets. So they just one company pushed a sunset from 2025 to 2027, in some cases 2030. Depending on who the customer was, and so I think that they're running into that. Again, just it's kind of like if you wanted to write a really good book, and you said, well, this book isn't good enough, so let's just get a whole bunch more writers in a room. And that book isn't good enough. Well, then let's get 1,000 writers in the room, and they're all sitting around. Okay, you're going to go write this scene, and you're going to go write that part, and everybody goes back to their desk and stares at it and says, what was I supposed to do here? And so my argument and our philosophy is that the platforms of the future are going to be, they need to be built from the ground up. The integrations need to be native integrations. In other words, the tables and the design of the software itself has to be built natively from the ground up to work with each other. I'd even argue that when you acquire other companies, so that there's again, going back to larger companies, when they purchase another POS vendor, that they never really do the integration properly.
Right.
And the reason I know this is because I know a lot of sales engineers that work at these companies. Okay. And so the other thing I see in the market is that the sales engineers, that their job satisfaction is an all-time low, because they're going in and making promises of what the software can do, and then they're finding out that the customer, the customers aren't getting the companies they're working for aren't able to deliver what the customers have been promised. And so I tried to partner with a couple and on a couple of deals, and they said, well, actually, your software probably works better than ours does, because our software isn't working all that well. So I think that we're going to see these very large enterprise software companies probably turn into the IBMs over the next 10 or 15 years. And so I think in 2035, the the taco vendor here on the street, or the little place where we go and have those hamburgers, right?
Yeah.
That little restaurant and Walmart will be using the same software package, right? And that company will have a $10 trillion plus valuation.
Right.
And so that's the transformation I see happening. And I think that's your kind of your web, 3.0. And then once all of that's digitized, now you can kind of take that and put that into more AI and machine learning. And now everything's been turned into ones and zeros. And then you can do things like, provide services to let that hamburger stand over here know how much meat they need to order for the next week, or how many hamburger buns they need to order. And they'll have the same access to technology as the larger companies will as well, like the Walmarts and the Costcos of the world, or the Home Depots. And then I think that company will also will have very large marketplaces. So right. the Amazon model will just be expanded into everything from co-working spaces to the repair operations that our company runs for many Ace Hardware stores, for example.
Makes sense. So it sounds like, there's already been like a baseline that's already been, we call innovative, already built out. We have that, email infrastructure. Now it's just really like kind of pattern matching. So I think that's what innovation really is, just finding these gaps in infrastructure, and then finding out how to really integrate it to make people's lives simpler, easier, and more connected, right? Is what I'm kind of hearing. Now I know you're a self-taught programmer, right? And you manage a team of engineers, sure. developers, and you also you act as the CEO. How did you teach yourself over the years? And do you have somebody like a mentor advisor who's overseeing your code, because you're not technically a computer engineer, but you've taught yourself?
Sure. Well, the answer is no, because I've been working as a software engineer for the last 20 years of my career, for the kind of the second half of my career here, and then even before then, it was I'd been using the technology out there to help run my businesses for my entire life. And so so again, the answer is no. And I think that there's I'm not sure that I agree with the experts, quote unquote, in a lot of cases. So a lot of things that I hear out there that I think are probably wrong, like the debate between using, for example, doc stores and relational databases, and doc stores are becoming, good enough to be relational databases, and you can run transactions, blah, all that kind of stuff. I think that to run, to run an ERP system, that you need transactional databases, and so I am the leader of the technology here in the company, and cool. and it's been my passion. It's really enjoyable to me. I think it's really interesting.
Cool. Yeah, I think
because they're really complex problems, right? We're talking about solving. So when you're sitting down and you're looking at database tables, you're trying to figure out, well, I have, the stuff that we're doing, it's what Musk is doing is easier, right? Going to Mars or something like that. The sun isn't just going to appear over here sure. the next day. It's not like you say, well, what happens if if Mars moves, or if the moon goes over here, or the sun does this, or what happens if there's a shutdown because there's a virus worldwide and all the companies have to shut down for a while? What kind of impact does that have? So every time you're building something out, you have to think about, well, is a company going to want to change this price, or are they going to want to do this? And what flexibility do you need? And the answer is that you need an unlimited flexibility, basically. Right. That you really need to no matter what you build, somebody's going to come to you and say that, we need this. We have this requirement for this reason, and you'll think, I didn't think that would come up. So it's kind of, you have to think of everything. So it's extremely challenging, and it's really a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think if you have the passion and you have the interest these days, I think you can be self-taught, just like you taught yourself programming. And I'm an engineer by trade, but now I'm working as a marketer, consultant, and investor. All of that has been taught out of interest. I did take a few online courses, but I don't think that just gave me a little bit more information. But the real stuff comes when you're actually applying it, playing with it, getting into the nitty gritty, and just like slowly running a campaign, running a new funnel, playing with it, optimizing, and then the experience is what really matters, right? And I think that's what over 20 years you can develop that and probably exceed any developer and who's just out of school, right? They learn some kind of frameworks, but I think at the end of the day, I think your experience will probably.
Well, you need both, but but again, being here in Mexico, I really want to encourage people to be self-taught. If you've got a laptop and you have access to a little bit of code, you can teach yourself enough to code. And if you don't have access to go to a university, you could lift yourself out of poverty by coding. And so there's been a lot written about that. The WordPress platform has been something that's been that has really helped a lot of people, and Matt Mullenweg's work over there has been really interesting, and I would encourage anybody out there that's interested in this to pick up a laptop, just start communicating with people online, because when you meet a software engineer, if you were to come over here into this space over here and meet a software engineer and say, look, I know nothing about this. I don't speak English. All I do is I speak Spanish, but I need to, how do I get started? They'll show you where to go.
Sure.
They'll probably sit down with you with your laptop and set up, GitHub and a couple of other things and get you started and show you how to create your first hello world. And that's really what you need is once you create that first hello world, and then you find out that it's actually coming from a database, and it's like, oh, wow, okay, what can I build from here? And it gets really interesting and fascinating. So I would really encourage, again, because we're in Mexico here, for people to really just get their hands on technology and start using it, and learn what's available.
Cool. And then switching gears to the growth side, I think I read somewhere where I saw you hired one junior sales rep, and they closed 150 stores in 15 months. Can you share with our audience, what was so effective in your selling process and in selling your product early on there?
Sure. So that's something that's always extremely important for any SaaS or any startup, and that's that product market fit, right?
Yep.
Is that you need to have a really good, solid product market fit. And although we have a large platform, the way we architected the platform is that we can create multiple products, right? We can within a couple of hours, we can create a very specific product for a specific vertical, and it'll look like the product was built specifically for them. That's what we did in this space, which was this kind of this repair space. We found a little niche market, which was the outdoor power equipment repair space, and we created a product for that. Took that to market, and it's worked out very well. It's a very small niche, but it was a good place to start. And so we had a lot of when we would. Once we could get people on the phone and get them in to see a demo, it was just the aha moments just went off, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we absolutely have to have this." And in our churn we've had negative churn with that, going to market with that product, and so we're now that's kind of been our wedge product, and we're starting to move up market with that product. So we're expanding into other repair areas. We're starting to expand. We're looking at aircraft maintenance and repair. We're in the medical space, just entering the medical device repair, and then in a couple of other verticals as well.
How long was that time frame from when you actually started building the product to start knocking on doors and doing demos, and how far along were you in the development process, if you had like to guess?
Sure. So it was really a short amount of time. It was kind of from when we were first approached about the problem till we had a product. So we were first approached about the problem till we had the airplane in the air. Mm-hmm. With the analogy of building the airplane while you're flying it. Well, we had the thing flying within about 30 days, and then over the next couple of years, we've added quite a bit of functionality to the airplane, and it's turned in from a Cessna 172 into maybe a small turboprop or something at this point, right?
Sure. Okay, so you had just like a basic version, what do you call like an MVP, 30 days in, and you were just going out there knocking and then building it out as you were speaking to customers and seeing that there was actually interest? Well,
it was more than an MVP, because our platform is we have a massive platform, and we've had one for a long time. So the MVP that we went to market with was really had, it was a fully functional product. It's just that the expansion and kind of flying the airplane and while building it is in of course Ace Hardware stores, for example, or these small independent hardware stores also do rentals. So then they came back and said, well, hey, this software works great. Can you do rentals for us? Sure, we'll roll out a rental module for you. And then they would say things like, well, our inventory doesn't work very well. The inventory system that we're using for our store doesn't work very well, and we try to use it for our service center. Can you guys run the inventory? We say, sure, we can roll out a module for that. So those are the kinds of things that we started, and that's why we have negative churn, because we have customers asking for more functionality and more modules. And I shouldn't really use the term module. Because it indicates that there has to be some sort of integration, but that's where we, so it wasn't really going from an MVP to something that was working better. It was more a matter of adding more functionality that the customers were looking for.
Got it.
And so many of those customers are also saying, well, can you replace our POS? And so we're saying, well, give us a little bit of time on that one.
Yeah, that's a big challenge there.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think you started off kind of middle, lower market, and then now you're slowly building up. You said, going up maybe, mid-market, maybe higher kind of enterprise. What's, for that specific industry, it seems like, manufacturers or people who are, need that kind of e-commerce and functionality for all their products. What's your current sales and growth process that you've seen to be proven to work for that? Are you just knocking on doors or what else are you guys trying?
Well, at this point, we seem to have enough work organically. Okay. Coming in the door, and we're certainly moving the strategy is to move up market. Of course, it's easier to start. It's more difficult to start down market and move up market than it is to provide an enterprise product and try to move down market, right? So we're cutting our teeth down market because the small guys don't know what they don't know, right? Mm-hmm. So. We'll have small guys ask for pricing engines, for example. Oh, by the way, if you're going to do inventory for me, can you do purchasing? They don't even know it's purchasing, but they say, but can you go out and shop around at all of these different vendors and get me prices and help me make a decision as to what I should buy? And they don't understand that that's actually something that would cost them $250,000 at a minimum to configure and tens of thousands of dollars a year to run, right? Yeah. So they're very demanding, right? And it's a good place to kind of cut your teeth, but it's also there's in terms of profitability, it's a little more challenging down market, right? So we're trying to move up market into that mid market. And then the enterprise market is always a challenge for startups because large companies will talk to a startup all day long, but they won't buy their product, right? Right. And so, but I think that landscape is changing as well with the what's recently happened. Here, look at the airlines, for example, right? So, before this, a couple of months ago, I wouldn't have even talked to an airline. And now we actually have somebody in an airline that we're actually beginning the conversation with. And again, a couple of months ago, I wouldn't have even continued the conversation because they would have just burned our time up. But now their backs are against the wall. They can't go to these large software vendors now, and they can't afford to spend 25, 50, 100, or in some cases where there was a deal in Europe that went south for 500 euros. And the product didn't get built, and there's, so they can't afford to spend that kind of money on with these larger vendors, and with the possibility of failure. So I really think they're going to start looking down market, and it'll be it's going to be a really good opportunity for smaller companies to build products for enterprise size companies, if that makes sense. And so that's our strategy is to move up market. And then really the strategy here is when I said to hold on about the POS is that kind of we're working on a POS product right now that we expect to release Q1 of 2021, right? Okay. And have in paid beta by the end, by probably Q4 this year. And that'll just kind of wrap everything up. Then we'll have everything. We'll have we'll have a full POS. We'll have e-commerce, inventory, purchasing, e-commerce, repair modules, just a whole host of software that can basically run your entire company. And then we have a couple of of customers that want us to run everything. That are asking us, as soon as you've got the POS, we want it. As soon as you have this other functionality, we want it. So we'll have probably, the strategy here is in Q1 of 2021, Q2 2022 is to have, or 2021 is to have a couple of customers where we're running their entire business, right? We're running everything from e-commerce to POS to just the entire business end to end, right?
Makes sense. So it
That's
seems
our
like you're
strategy.
focusing more on like
Right.
product-led growth or product-like marketing, where you have a certain base of customers. They're saying, hey,
Sure.
we need this. We're going to pay you more if you develop this, or like, let's not focus on the other guys and growing with what we have.
Sure.
Let's keep building on what we have, and we can, this is an easy win for us, right? A quick.
Sure. Yeah, our culture right now is delivery, right? So we've shut off top of funnel. We don't. Sales is not turned. We have a salesperson, and he's very active. But we've shut off top of funnel, and we have plenty of work to do in the meantime. So that our everything is focused on delivery.
Cool. That's a really good place to be.
It is. Hence, that's why we're down here. We need good software engineers.
Cool. Yeah. Build out the product.
Yep.
What's your thoughts on Salesforce? And do you feel there's a space for disruption in that market? As the size and how massive they are in the market right now, dominating and continuing to grow, do you think there's still room for disruption?
Yeah, I mean, Salesforce would be in those top companies that I think are going to look like Big Blue did back in the 80s and 90s, right? That IBM, that they're I mean, show me somebody that says that Salesforce is easy to use, right? I mean, point to somebody that says, or show me some of our software vendors send us Salesforce quotes. I've been looking at these quotes like, what is this? Does it? And I have to get on the phone with the salesperson for them to explain what the quote means, and it's just I don't. The customers that we're dealing with are looking at Salesforce with cross-eyed, like they wouldn't even know where to start. They wouldn't even know where to begin. So I think that, and so that's that interoperability, right? That let's build kind of a marketplace. We have this platform, and then we'll let all these companies come in, and you can have. And I don't know if any of this is accurate or not, but if I need inventory, there's 5 or 10 or 15 inventory systems that I can integrate with my Salesforce platform, and then it'll all work together, and it'll be great. And I don't think that's the answer. I think that's going to fail.
Yeah.
So,
I feel like that's a strategy, like the Salesforce, the SAP, the Infusionsoft. Maybe they just overwhelm you on like how complex it is to build this out, and then as the owner who's maybe has less education about it, it's like, okay, yeah, like you guys are smart, I'm the dumb one here. You guys know what you're talking about. Sure, I'll just pay it. Versus like that maybe there is an easier solution. But
see, I don't think it's that they're overwhelming the customer. I think that they're actually overwhelmed. Right. Okay. I think SAP is overwhelmed with trying to transform to S/4HANA and failing to deliver. And I think that they're overwhelmed with with their acquisitions when they acquire another company. And again, there's a bunch of databases and tables and information sitting over there, and then everything's sitting over and a bunch of software engineers get in a room and say, well, all right, well, how is this, how are we going to make this all talk to each other? And I don't think that they ever, I don't think it's going to work. I think that I would, my advice to those companies would be start over.
Really?
Right. Start from, you have your S/4HANA database, and maybe they're trying to do that, but start at ground zero and build it from the ground up, as opposed to trying to do all these integrations. I think that's where they're failing, actually.
So they built this big ugly tower, so it's hard. They're trying to fix everything in between, so just knock it down, start all over again.
Right, knock it down, and or build one next to it and have it. It's kind of that lift and shift thing, right? And I think that's where that would be the longer term strategy for Cynch, for example, is that we see a lot of opportunity there to acquire on-prem solutions and just do a lift and shift, right? Okay. You acquire on-prem solution where customer satisfaction is an all-time low. So there's a company owned by KKR where that situation is happening right now, and you you replace the old on-prem software that the customers hate, and then you drop in a SaaS solution, and then your multiples go through the roof, right?
Sure.
And then your customer satisfaction goes through the roof, and your customer lifetime value goes through the roof, and then you don't have to spend that 3-to-1 CAC. You're probably spending, a lot less than that on CAC, right?
Right. Yeah. Sure. It's a cheaper an acquisition, but growth by acquisition, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So if I'm either an existing SaaS founder, I'm running my company, maybe I'm early stage, or I'm looking to start from scratch. You as a serial entrepreneur, do you have a framework or suggestions on how to find other business models to uncover some that could be worth tackling here today? And
don't do what I did.
Okay.
Yeah, don't try to tackle the largest problem, right? Okay. This is don't try to solve the largest problem there is to solve, which I think this is actually where we are. Go for a point solution and build something up to a few $1 million and sell it off. That's what I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the number one challenge you're facing right now in your business?
So I think the largest challenge is really just trying to move up market.
Okay.
Gaining that traction with looking for the first enterprise deal is really, I think, is a challenge, and trying to make sure you pick the right one so that they don't a lot of startups have failed because they've spent too much time with enterprise deals, thinking that they're going to close. So I think that's the challenge is moving up market.
Do you feel like are you seeing any differences in responses or people willing to move forward based on the current environment with the virus, or are people still having those conversations?
We're getting more, yes, we're getting more hits and more interest when we're reaching out to somebody on LinkedIn or we're posting an article. In fact, our sales guy just got a hit from a huge company just the other day. Just actually, I think it was yesterday. Cool. That we probably would not have seen a couple of months ago, right?
Interesting. So it's actually doing the opposite effect for you guys.
Yeah. I think that again that the budgets aren't there that were there a few months ago. They can't blow $25 million on a deal and just hope that it's going to work. So I think that they'll be looking down market and saying, well, if we could spend a few $1 million with these guys and get something to work, then that might be a better option. So.
Yeah, I feel like people are really looking internally right now, right? So they're saying, maybe we really need to look at what's out there, not just continue. And this is an opportunity. Let's take it. Let's explore what other options are there. So that's interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think it's a really good time to be an entrepreneur and to be in this space, because I think things are going to change dramatically. And I can't emphasize enough how much I see that these larger companies are failing.
Yeah.
And I know this. The sales engineers at these companies are just. It's the. When you get behind the scenes and hear what's going on, it's not a pretty picture.
Yeah. Do you suggest that as a tactic to figure out where a problem is? Maybe go speak to sales guys or sales engineers and see what they're complaining about. I wonder if that could work.
Because
I know a lot of them just like to complain anyways, right? So they say, hey, this thing's just not working, or we need to. This thing just is never. They've been talking about it for years and they just never get it.
Yeah, I don't know how you solve it. I had another sales engineer that went to a company I won't name again that runs an e-commerce platform, and he said, "Oh yeah, well, I'm going to work for this company and they're using PHP." And I'm thinking, okay, all right, that's not actually. I don't think that's a positive.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
So, okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, just a thought, anyways.
Yeah.
What does 2020 look like for you, and what are you most excited about for the year?
Sure. My excitement is to deliver our first retail group that we're running the entire business end to end, where when they don't have to do any integrations, they don't have to do any nightly data loads or when somebody comes to their website and they look to see what's available at what store, it'll be live data. Right. Okay. To where we can actually, decrement what's being displayed on the website there live to say that, well, somebody's actually just purchased this. So now we're going to drop, now the number's no longer 10, it's 8. Right. as opposed to the large enterprise guys out there. So how many people have gone, how many times you've gone to a large company, you've looked online and it says they have 5 there, and then you go to the store and you look and there's none there, and you go and you ask the clerk and he's looking, at the same crappy software that you were looking at online, and he's like, well, and then 20 minutes later it's like, well, I guess we don't have it. So you need to go, try the one in Inglewood, but it says they have them in that other city over there, but let me actually call them first and verify, right?
Exactly,
So anyway, that's
that's happened to me endless times for sure with go to the Best Buy,
and it's not supposed to be happening these days, but it is, because it simply doesn't work. Right. So we're looking to build something that actually works, right? Cool. And where we can run their small business end to end. So I'm really excited about that.
Cool. When can our audience expect to see that launch? And
we'll have that Q1.
Q1?
Yeah.
Next year?
Yeah. We're there. Yeah. We're yeah.
Cool. All right. Where can our audience get in touch with you and learn more about Cynch or?
Sure, just Cynch at CYNCH, right? .me, okay. And or you can send me an email to Dan at CYNCH.me.
Okay. Anything you want to add before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. I mean, thank you very much for having me. And again, I'm really excited about what's going on down here in Guadalajara and the tech scene in Mexico, and I just I really hope that not so much the government or in other companies really help support this scene down here. This is really really interesting what's happening down here. The transformation is great, and the other issue that I think that people need to understand about a tech scene down in Guadalajara is it's from a vast majority or a big portion of the United States, it's a 3-hour plus plane ride. You don't have to. You're not flying down to Brazil or anything, right? You're coming down to Guadalajara, which is very close, and it's the same time zone, and the number of English speakers down here is great. So it's I think this is a really cool tech scene, and I'm really looking forward to building a much larger team here.
Awesome. Yeah, me as well. So if anybody's in Guadalajara, come say hi to myself or Dan.
We'll
go out for some tacos.
So, we're in the old Kodak offices over here.
Yeah, cool. Well, if anybody, thanks guys. I appreciate it, Dan. And
Thank you.
We might have to do a round 2 at some point when you launch. And
sure.
We'll share that with the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening in to today's episode. Don't forget to join us for another episode where we interview top leaders and experts in the business and SaaS industry. If you enjoyed this episode, I ask that you please give us a 5-star review on iTunes. That would be really, really appreciated. Otherwise, if you have any feedback, suggestions, or improvements for this podcast, please feel free to send it directly to me on our website at horizoncapital.com. Or you can just tweet me at Akil Jabbar. Thanks again, and hope to see you guys on the next episode.